are you? don't blame you. It's very good.
It sounded really good.
Golden beet or red beet?
It depends.
Oh, okay.
With citrus. Hey.
All right, so I'll call this work session to order. Our first item today is the Clackamas County Broadband Project. This will be presented by Dave Cummings and Chief Dexter.
That's me.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. I'm Dave Cummings. I'm the Chief Information Officer, Director of Technology in Clackamas County. I've been over there for 23 years. Seems like a lot longer.
I bet it does.
I was only going to stay for 5, but hey, it's a great place to work. Back in 2010, and even before then, maybe 20 years ago, the county did a study on telecommunications throughout the county because they had a need to connect the public agencies together, and they decided they need to come up with some money to do that, and they didn't have the money at the time. So around 2010, there was a federal grant that came out, and we applied for it. Actually, the first round was fiber to the home, and we really didn't qualify for that. The next round was the dark fiber, which is a fiber backbone, and we qualified for it, and we ended up getting it. So it was an $11 million project. We had partners. The partners were Clackamas ESD, the Educational School District, and the city of Sandy and SandyNet. And it was a horrendous battle all the way, but we ended up getting the grant, and we ended up building a very high-capacity fiber backbone throughout the county and connected all our public agencies and all the schools and hospitals and libraries and a bunch of different agencies throughout the county. It was a major savings for everybody, for the county, and for everybody getting onto the network. Just an example I always use, the little Colton School District, I think there's maybe 4 or 5 buildings out there. To get over to Clackamas ESD that did all their student databases and all their processing for them, because they had to go through 3 different franchise areas, was quoted $10,000 a month. And if you know anything about the educational system, that's several teachers, because they don't pay teachers enough. My wife's a teacher, so I know how that works. So we provided 10 times the capability for $255 a month. Tremendous savings. Big boost to the county and to e-commerce and everybody for stimulating growth within the county. Years ago, there was the Oregon Trail that came up. Didn't know anything about the Oregon Trail, which I'm sure you do. Once you got up to the Columbia River, it was $50 to put your wagon on a barge to come up the river. That's a lot of money.
This one, $50 was actually...
A lot of money. But the Barlows had a different idea. They built a trail, and it was $5. And when they did that, the whole Oregon Territory started to boom. And that's what our fiber backbone is starting to do for the region and for Clackamas County. We probably, I can't tell you all the number of the connections we have, probably over 300 connections that we have connected into it right now. We're growing. We're self-sustainable. We have no debt at this time. We're trying to bring in as much revenue as we can to expand the fiber throughout the county. It's the goal of the board to get access for all, and hopefully at a lower rate for all the houses and businesses in the county. That's a big task. Takes 3 things. There's a formula, a recipe to do that. It's time to do it, it's the funding to do it, and the proper tools to do it. And to do it successfully has to be done very smartly and have a really good plan. We have what we call the CBX, Clackamas Broadband Exchange Plan. And part of that, one of the tools is ISPs. And we like to partner with different companies to be the ISP as we put fiber in. You wouldn't put fiber to an area if nobody's going to service that area. But if we end up building to that area and no one wants to be the ISP, we could be forced to become an ISP, which we don't have approval from our board yet to do that. This is Duke Dexter next to me. He actually came on as an intern during the build project when we first built the fiber backbone. He is now the manager over that whole process, and I literally have to hold him back as he's going forward trying to build stuff. We're going outside the county. It's our goal to bring funds in from outside the county back into the county so we can expand the network. We have fiber into the Pittock, and that's where all the fiber comes into the area. It's very desirable for the telecoms to get access into that.
Into the what?
The Pittock. It's
As in the mansion?
Same name, same developer, or the original owner, but no, the Pittock Mansion is up in the West Hills, and then there's a building downtown 921 Washington Street, and it was where he kind of worked, and buildings named after him as well, and that's what they call an ISP hotel. So
okay.
all the different ISP providers meet at that one location. You can kind of cross-connect and, go down to, go up to, head up to Seattle, go down to San Francisco, head over to Denver, whatever it is, but you cross-connect, and it's just kind of a meeting place. But it is not the mansion.
The meeting place of the
fiber.
wires
The back-
or the people.
Yeah, the telecoms buy internet from the larger companies, and that's where it comes into the Portland area. One of the problems, though, with that is that it's on a high-risk area for faults during an earthquake. So we are swinging a deal to go into Denver with an alternate route that has a very low risk right now, and all the telecoms are really interested in us getting that so they can connect in for that redundancy. And that could be very lucrative for the county once we do that. One of the things we're doing with the fiber backbone, I'm going to have Duke go ahead and talk about the map and where the fiber goes right now, some of the projects we have going on. We're doing some proof of concepts with some housing areas where we're going to partner with SandyNet and some of the other providers to provide services into those areas, and just a little bit at a time expand the fiber in the network throughout the county so we can just bring in as much economy into the county as we can and grow it at a sustained rate. Probably my biggest goal really is to keep people within the county so they don't drive outside the county to go to work someplace else. And then slowly increase the population, because we don't want to grow too fast. We don't want to end up like, New York or LA or anything like that. But it's pretty exciting stuff. So Duke, go ahead. Oh, one more thing. In the back here is Dave DeVore. He's my Chief Technology Officer. He was one of the authors of the original grant that we wrote. Why we really upset some of the telecoms was because they wrote the same grants and they didn't get the grants, and we'd never written one before, and we wrote it and we got it. So they all said, well, you got the grant, but you can't build it and run it. I said, you wrote the grant and you do that for a business and you didn't get it. We wrote it and we got it. I think we can do it. And we have. So go ahead, Duke. Oh.
You didn't know Ken had snuck in.
I didn't know Ken snuck in. This is Ken Humberson. He's
watching him.
He's on our board. He's very supportive of what we're doing with the Clackamas Broadband Exchange. And yeah, I'm so glad he's here.
You're doing fine. I have a wonderful team here, let me tell you.
Go ahead, Duke.
Good afternoon. So why don't I go over a couple things real quick. So you've gotten 3 pieces of paper. A couple of them are maps, and so one of them is labeled CBX Network Map 2019, and this is kind of a photo of our network as it sits right now throughout Clackamas County. We don't show at this particular point the builds we're looking at, one up into one over to Washington County, and we're working with them to develop a network kind of through the Tigard-Tualatin area, kind of as an ITS or a traffic signal project. Once that's in place, then we can kind of hit other entities as well, so city halls and fire stations, fire life safety, police stations, once we get that in place. We're also building up into Multnomah County as part of a project with Multnomah ESD, which is connecting several schools that exist within Clackamas County but are part of school districts that are located outside. And so that's kind of bringing them all together so that they have better connectivity. Now, then the second map that I have, I just kind of zoomed in to the Milwaukee area, and this was labeled CBX Milwaukee map for 2019, and this kind of just gives you an idea where the fiber currently resides within the city of Milwaukee. And both maps are kind of consistent. The orange are the aerial lines, and then the purple will be our underground fiber. So please review those, and I know we'll kind of go through a Q&A. If you have any questions, we can answer those at that time. To touch on a couple things that David kind of talked about, he always talks about Colton School District. The one that I like to kind of brag about is actually the Lake Oswego School District. So we bid, and out of all the bidders, we won that project to build a dark fiber network for the Lake Oswego School District. We were able to take them from their current connections, which was 1 gig, and now they're at 20 gig. And in the first 10 years, they'll save $1.5 million. And again, that, and then beyond that is we've also built in redundancy. So rather than just having one connection in and out of school, they actually have 2. So if by chance there is a fiber outage, none of the schools will go down. So that's the one I kind of like to brag about. Touching on real quick the eastern route that he was talking about, as we've all heard that Portland, Oregon itself sits on the subduction zone. If the big one hits, that is overdue at this point. Kind of everything west of the river, in theory, is in bad shape. The Pittock building is located over there, which is that main ISP hub. One of the main problems is that from 1929, it has not been seismically upgraded since that date, and so that's a big issue.
Interesting choice to put.
Yeah.
You know, at the time, before you started talking subduction zones, it was a great location. But, as new technologies and research goes, now you're like, not such a great choice. So what we are looking at doing is basically from one of our hubs, which is over in the city of Sandy, we will get connectivity from the city of Sandy all the way to Denver. It will not be reliant whatsoever on anything from the west side of the river. So if and when the big one kind of hits, our network, you can use it for disaster recovery, we can use it for internet, communications, everything can just be kind of taken care of that because it's a much more sound connection. But again, we'll use that as redundant. It's one of our primaries, but it won't be the only one.
And that's a overland wire from Sandy to Denver, or that's patching into existing?
So it is based on fiber. Well, what we're going to end up doing is actually just kind of leasing what they call wavelength, and so it'll be a 100 gig wavelength. And what we'll do is that'll be, again, from the city of Sandy all the way to Denver, and then at that point, we can share something along those lines, that wavelength with other entities.
We're not building fiber all the way to Denver.
We are not,
We're
but
patching
primarily, just as far as an overland, yes, it is an overland network. I would say probably 99% of it will be buried or it's all underground. Yeah. There will be probably a couple aerial pieces, but more of those will be where they go over rivers and some other obstacles, maybe some canyons where they needed to go aerial to be able to get across that.
I hear you correcting, and I think correctly so, references to wires versus fiber. Just for the general audience, would you mind explaining why that distinction is important? If
So,
you can.
yeah, there's, yeah, I mean, and again, a lot of it is as we kind of talk through things, clearly in my world, terms can mean different things, so I appreciate that. But I like to make a point that it is all fiber-based. So other companies, and a classic one would be Comcast, they do have a bunch of fiber plant, but it goes to kind of this distribution set, and it's called a node. From there, they'll run copper cables out to homes, and there's problems with that because once you get to, fiber, you're running light over that, and until the laws of physics change, that's the fastest way to transfer information. They do a great job, don't get me wrong, of being able to use that copper plant and deliver good services, but it's always, almost as good as, or just as good as fiber, but it never really is. Which then at some point we'll get into that as well. So, but yeah, so I try to make sure that you understand that the network we're putting together is a completely all fiber network.
Great, thank you.
Help me remember, we toured the facility that Jeremy works at.
Yeah, Clackamas ESD?
Yeah. It's
Server.
been 5 years.
Educational Service District.
I know there's providing sort of cloud services, computer networks or
Server.
servers.
Servers,
Yes.
yeah.
Are they also providing some kind of ISP out of there for like the schools and the fire departments and things like that that are using?
Yes, they're an ISP, but they're only chartered to do government agencies. They can't do businesses or
They could do
homes
the
or
city of
anything.
Milwaukee.
Yes, they could. Now, part of the issue with the city of Sandy is they have a really high AAA rating and for their service level, and they want to maintain that. So as farther out they go, it's harder for them to maintain that service level. So they're real cautious about going too far from the city of Sandy. Our Kiwanis project that we're just going to the board for approval for,
We have approval for.
we have approval for.
Yeah.
Ex-boss. They're going to be the ISP, but it's relatively close to the city of Sandy, so they can still guarantee that high level of service. So they're a little cautious about doing that. But some of the other city of Sherwood is interested in being a ISP for us, and they're an ISP in their area. And we're starting to slowly get some of the telecoms on board and become more interested. Some of them that we just recently started partnering with Reliance Connects, which was one of our big opponents in the beginning, and now we're partners with them and we're doing things, and I'd never thought that would happen. So it's pretty exciting. Things are starting to fall into place and things are starting to work very well.
And then just to reference kind of what we call the Kiwanis project, it's just, it's a small community off of Highway 26 as you head up to the mountain, and their service is abysmal, and we run right through there. Our backbone runs right through the middle of this community, and so, again, what we've been able to do is, with the city of Sandy, they'll be the ISP, and then we'll be the fiber infrastructure, and we'll build it to the home, and then SandyNet will be their ISP. Yeah, and we're going to go from, they're less than, as I speak about this, 4 and 1, so 4 down, 1 up. They're going to go to a 300 symmetrical network and actually save $20 a month.
Right. We want to be able to do this because we want to do proof of concepts at smaller scales with lower risk to see how we can do it and how we can do it better. And if we get more of that under our belt, we'll start taking on bigger projects and more complex projects. But the main thing is for us to remain sustainable, remain debt-free, and be highly successful. Where across the nation, some of the other cities and agencies and counties that have tried this have just bitten off way more than they can chew. And so we're moving a little slower, but we're doing it the right way.
So you mentioned the need for ISPs. Is SandyNet a corporation, or is it owned by the city?
It's owned by the city.
It's owned by the city.
It is.
So they created their own ISP?
They have been a service provider for quite some time. They used to be a wireless provider, so again, they're a little more isolated, and they couldn't get anybody come up and actually provide any kind of services, and so they originally started out as a wireless company, and when that wasn't fulfilling the needs of the community, that's when they, again, kind of invested. I think they spent roughly $8 million and built basically a fiber to the home project within the city of Sandy.
And are there models for ISPs that are not profit-driven? Like, I mean, if you talk about traditional ISPs, that are in it for profit, are there, I'm not sure I'm that interested in that.
Yeah, I guess you could take SandyNet would be
Yeah.
SandyNet is a good model of that.
Break even.
Yeah. Yeah.
The big advantages of a public entity being an ISP is, one, you can, for these, for the capital expense, you can spread it out over a longer period of time. And so Comcast themselves, when they get a new project that's brought forward, they won't consider anything without a payback period of 40 months or less. And that's a very short time period. But, a public entity, you can go out and get a revenue bond. You could somehow stretch that out maybe, 10, 15, 20 years, and it makes it much more palatable long-term. And but then again, the other big benefit is you don't have any stakeholder. I mean, you do have stakeholders, it's the community itself, but you're not looking at returns. Exactly. You don't have investors to pay back.
So I know Sandy, when they originally did it, they set it up for a 20-year, but as I recall, they paid it back already, and
Yes.
they are now, they're even.
I don't think they've. I don't think they've paid it back yet.
Haven't paid all of it back yet? It's
I don't
pretty
think so.
close.
I think they're ahead of schedule. I don't think they're there yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they're way ahead of schedule from
Yes.
what I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, even at,
Jeremy said that they were like,
yeah, just right there, yeah,
Cost is really reasonable for the citizens.
oh, yeah.
yes.
Half.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're $40 for a 300 symmetrical network or 60 for the 1 gig.
Right. And Comcast is 120.
Right.
And just to be abundantly clear, this is fiber going into the house in
Yes.
Sandy.
Yes.
It's not a copper connection. It is-
That's correct.
Yes.
It's,
Fiber all the way down, terminated into the modem.
yeah,
Yeah.
way back, 5, 6 years ago now, whatever it's been, I know Mark and we met with our IT person at that time and, talked about the viability of doing, something like what Sandy was doing or working with ESD and, utilizing their services and stuff. Their server farm was amazing.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Kind of
it
like,
is.
whoa, I had no idea. Yeah, it was pretty impressive. It still is pretty impressive, I'm sure. I just haven't seen it lately.
Yeah, Jeremy was one of the original authors of our grant when we first wrote it, so he was there
Yeah.
from the beginning. So, anyways, Duke was going to discuss 5G, and when he's done, you can continue to ask us questions or anything else you want to know about CBX.
Yeah. So the third document here, not my creation. So it comes from called Community Networks, run by a gentleman by the name of Christopher Mitchell. And it is kind of clearly the Pocket Guide to 5G hype. And so it is a little biased away from 5G. And bottom line is I'm a fiber guy, so I'm a little biased myself. But this provides some good information. First and foremost, I think that the 5G technology is a great technology. I think the implementation and getting it out into the real world is going to be a lot more difficult than kind of sold, if you will, by AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, everybody else. And so this just kind of goes through basically what it is. It's a wireless network that, under the right conditions, can deliver speeds up to gigabit symmetrical, so your upload, your download is a gig. I think that as 5G kind of gets more and more deployed, the bigger piece that's going to benefit from it is your autonomy automobiles, and so they're going to need that amount of data. And then, of course, the other piece is the amount of data going back. Currently, your 4G networks cannot always handle the amount of data that's being sent to them. And so, like, a great example is I go a lot up to government camp, and when I look down on my phone, it says 4G, and I look at my bars, I've got full bars. I try to send a message with a picture in it, and it sits on my phone for 30 to 45 minutes. It's just waiting for its turn to get on to that network. 5G will help kind of eliminate that. They will be able to handle higher capacity and be able to do it at a more quick speed. I think for myself, and I'm kind of on the very front of the page there, there's no 5G race. It was, and you kind of seen that they've been able to utilize it to help remove regulation out in the marketplace so that it's easier to deploy networks for the larger carriers. And so, again, 5G, to me, it was really more about regulation or removing regulation, more about the technology and everything else that kind of comes along with it. They have been successful in ultimate positions, but again, they're kind of shooting at such a high wavelength that a tree, windows, walls interfere with that signal and create havoc with that. I think it's going to be more successful on cellular or mobile phone devices and vehicles than it ever will be to the home. So unless you have a direct line of sight, you're going to have some issues. Obviously, here in Portland, we have a lot of, or in Oregon, we have a lot of trees, we have hills, and other things that will lower the capacity of these networks to fully take shape. But to deploy those, they do need more aerial networks. They do require more cell towers, and they're called, mini cells, small cells, and they need to have them every block, every other block. They can't be shared by multiple networks. Each network needs its own tower, and they can't be on the same pole because it could interfere with one another. And so I think it's going to be where they have to deploy them everywhere, and everything's going to be that. I have seen some very good mock-ups on light poles where they kind of build it into the infrastructure of the light pole, and actually looks relatively good. I wouldn't have known unless I knew that's what that was. So,
Are you aware of any third-party research on any health issues? We're getting all kinds of letters.
no, I don't. But when they put these up and they put a sticker on it that says, do not get within 5-10 feet, I mean, there is, but I am not aware of any third-party research done on I think it's the UF wavelengths that they kind of come out of.
Yeah.
I've been told if it's up on the pole, people walking down underneath are perfectly fine, but that was just a conversation, not a report or anything that I've seen.
So on your speed thing, on, the basics of this, I will tell you that the Electronic Frontier Foundation says basically the same things. I was just looking at their website this afternoon, and they say basically the same things this sheet is saying. And the thing about people being left, which is kind of buried here, but people being left behind, that 5G is not going to solve the problem of more rural or less densely populated areas.
Well, most rural areas don't have 4G LTE at this time.
Right.
So what makes you think they're going to move 5G out there at this time? And especially when so this has to be in that spectrum wave of 18 to 24 gigahertz, and your effective range is, I think they say it's 300 feet, 500 feet, something like that. It's a shorter range on that. You get out into these rural areas, and now you're talking some really mass distances. For me, the technology for rural area, especially from a wireless standpoint, is what they call the white space. So in that TV space, and Microsoft's been working to get the white space and do it that way. They've been able to hit 25, the federal or the FCC rule of 25.3 on a regular basis, and at pretty good distances as well. So I think it was up to 2 miles.
Well, the other point they make, which isn't really made here, is about monopoly power, and we are a victim of that here, monopoly power. I mean, I guess we have two choices, but so we don't have a single choice, but we really have two bad choices as far as I'm concerned, and they said 68 million Americans have, basically one choice.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at it as well, the bigger scope on a national scale is not only there's only a few companies that are actually distributing that signal, they also are buying all the content. And so they're going to control the from the content production all the way to the distribution.
Right, and they're not, and the Comcasts and AT&Ts aren't investing in broadband anymore because they're trying to play the hype of the 5G, so they're not really expanding their...
Well, good, so they won't go after us when we do our own.
Just you wait.
Well, I would say the only thing, obviously Hillsborough is expanding and investing millions of dollars, and up to this date, I haven't heard of a lawsuit out in that area.
They're doing their own ISP?
Yeah.
They are.
City-owned?
Yeah, so they're going to,
Called HighNet or something, right?
HighNet, and they're going to invest $4 million over the next, $4 million each year over the next 6 years, so a total of about $24 million, and build a city-owned fiber network.
Must be nice to be home to Intel sometimes.
Right?
Yeah.
I had a question, just going back to the fiber network. I just wanted to know if you had talked at all, we have now a half-time emergency manager, and I'm wondering what sort of outreach the county has done to talk to emergency managers around the county about how this service is beneficial in terms of, when the big one hits or any other number of disasters we all are concerned about.
Yeah, honestly, I can't speak to that on the outreach or anything along those lines. I know from a fire life safety piece, we have two connections between WACA and CECA, or the 911 Center for Washington County and the 911 Center for Clackamas County, and we have redundant paths connection between us. Also, there's the bug out there, which is the the magic. So anyway, so we connect all the fire stations, and we connect a lot of the police stations, much like Milwaukee and the stations here. And what we're really able to do on that, and I know they save. It's more of a cash savings, so no longer do they have to drive and get training. Now they have great enough speeds, they can actually just do the training right over their internet in the stations, and so you save time in driving and fuel costs and everything else associated with that.
I'm going to have my Chief Technology Officer, Dave DeVore. He's been working with the EOC within Clackamas County and in the region on a Magix project. And switch out.
Which Dave's?
Hi, I'm Dave DeVore. We work closely with our EOC department from two areas. One, the EOC in Clackamas County does coordinate with the other local emergency managers, and we have worked with that team periodically to let them know and give them updates about where we are with the fiber, what's going on. Almost all the fire departments and police stations are all hooked up. We're working with them on enhancing their alarm system over CBX and so forth. Magix, which is the Metro Area Joint CAD integration, I can't even remember what it's for. Clackamas County is coordinating with Washington County and Lake Oswego, and I believe a couple other local counties on integration of the CAD systems, especially between Washington County and Clackamas County, and that's over CBX fiber, and it's redundant as well, like Duke was saying, and we're trying to expand that out to also hit some of the other non-participating but hopefully communicating areas like KMB and so forth that have large fire departments as well. It's a growing effort, though.
Yeah. Great. Thanks.
Switch?
Camera set for you, right?
I mean, I know this would be a complete seat of the pants, and I will never hold you to it, but if Milwaukee wanted to do fiber to home, what would you imagine that we would have to invest to do that?
I'll throw out rough numbers, but if City of Sandy is maybe a third the size of Milwaukee, a fourth,
How many people are in Sandy, do you remember?
It's probably.
I want to say it's 3,400, and they've connected up 2,600, somewhere around and through there. So
We've got, 10,000 houses, roughly, somewhere between 10 and 11,000
well, and
homes.
if you just take that, it cost them $8 million to do theirs, and if it's a third, 24, if it's 4, 32. And that would be an all underground deployment. And so they did everything entirely underground.
Which is
But to be
smart.
quite honest, I've driven a couple of your side streets. It might have to be all underground because the poles are actually pretty busy and old.
A mess, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, don't try the intersection.
Bring it all down.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my God, would that be awesome?
I think the benefit where, potentially some cost could be saved is that, if you look through the city of Milwaukee map and what we have already, we continue to add to this yearly. And so one that we don't actually have down on here, a couple, is we're looking to build a good portion of Oakfield. And so our traffic signal group that manages the signals needs to reach, was it Oakfield and Oak Grove, and is it Thiessen and Oakfield? And so, yeah, all of those, we're going to be connecting those up with fiber. So that's a build that we don't even have down on here. But as you kind of take a look at that, the more and more fiber we add in there, then it's all backbone, and then from there you can just build off your middle mile, and then of course your drops, and it could be a significant cost savings.
So when Sandy buried, all those lines? Did they also bury their electrical lines and everything?
No.
No, they just did the fiber.
No, they did do, that corridor, the Highway 26 going through Sandy, that's an entirely underground, I think, except for a couple high transmission lines. But that's an undergrounding district, but it's just that business corridor. Everything else is actually aerial, but they decided just to do everything underground.
So is there any kind of, so there's the model of the city creates its own ISP like Sandy, and then there's the model of, you hire some existing profit-driven ISP. Is there any other kind of model out there of a not-for-profit group operating as providing ISP services that a city could contract with or something?
Well, I think the third option would be if we get permission to be an ISP ourselves as the county to be the ISP. And then the whole idea of, as you talk and hear all these numbers, it's very obviously it's quite a bit of money to do this. And to be able to do this and generate revenue and grow, like I was saying earlier, we want to do a housing area, which was Kiwanis to give us a proof of concept. If that pans out for us, we'll go into an area called Colorado, which has a lot more homes, will generate more revenue. But the big revenue generators are your business parks, to be able to go into those and generate revenues, and be able to take that revenue as it grows and go out to your underserved areas, where the cable companies will never go out there because it's not profitable for them to do that. But as a nonprofit, which we are, and still make money, we can go into those areas and be able to provide those services. And as that grows and picks up steam, we'll be able to reach all the areas within the county to give access, what we call access for all, for high bandwidth at a lower cost. And that's where we're going. And it's slowly happening, and like I said, we had the gentleman that does the USDA grants come in and talk to us. He was just blown away that we have no debt up to this point where we're at, and we're generating over probably around $1.5 million a year in revenues coming in, and we're pouring it back into the business. One of the issues with the USGS grants is you got to be an ISP in order to get them. So it's kind of a catch-22 for us right now. We got to get money to do it, and we need the tools, and we need the time, but how do we do that? And so it just takes a lot of good planning, a lot of partners, and don't take too high of a risk right off the bat, which we aren't doing. So anytime that we can come to you and say, we have this plan, an idea to do this or that, and if you support us and want to jump on board with us, and it all makes sense, and it's a good thing for the economy, a good thing for the citizens of this county and this city, it's good for everybody. And I think years ago when one of the cable companies, I was arguing with them, which I never do, and they said, well, why do you want to come in here and compete against us and do this and that? And I said, well, your kids need to be able to be competitive when they go to the job market. And a lot of times, for many of them, and not for all, because a lot of them are entrepreneurs, they need to go on to college and they need to compete against these other kids that have the unfair advantage of having the high bandwidth so that they can do better in their studies. Don't you want your kids to get ahead? And the token answer to me was, our kids don't have to go to college. We're the major employer in this town. They'll come to work for us. From that moment on, there's no way I was not going to build this fiber backbone. And we've done it, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Lisa, there is one other model, and the city of Eugene has one that's pretty similar to this. And so what it is the city or the municipality would build the infrastructure and then not be the ISP, but then open it up, call it an open access network, and then allow other ISPs, whomever it might be, to basically tap into your network and deliver services off of that. And what that ends up doing is generally bringing in more competitors to your neighborhoods. And so instead of having one or two options cost, you potentially could have 5 or 6, and that generally the competition itself will help bring down the cost.
So Eugene doesn't set like parameters on their rates.
No.
It's just the competition that
That's
sets
correct.
the rate.
Yeah,
controls
what are you
the
going to charge, how little profit, or how efficient can you get?
Do you happen to know what people are paying for a gigabit service?
Last time I remember, I want to say it was anywhere from $45 to $60 for varying, not too, maybe from a 50 meg to 150 meg, something like that.
Oh.
I honestly, just off the top of my head, I don't, but I know that I want to say they have 5 or 6 different providers on that network. For the municipality, you don't have to have customer service, you don't have to have billing, you don't need to have a crew on hand to do different things. And so from an operational standpoint and a liability standpoint, that is lower for the municipality. But it probably costs a little bit more to the end user.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for us today?
I don't have any.
Oops, they're taking notes.
Like Ann.
I just wanted to make one comment, which was, in case it wasn't said, thank you to the commissioner for joining us for today, and for his ongoing leadership with his team and his willingness to talk to us at any point as we've had questions over the last year and a half. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good, thanks.
thank you very much.
Good to see you guys.
Nice seeing you.
Always. We'll have to get you back to EDC again one of these days soon. Talk to us.
You guys are now using ESD.
I saved it in your folder.
Yeah?
Yeah, so we connect you guys
Yeah.
through your main hub is the
Yeah.
station.
Oh, I should have left my jacket on.
Pardon?
I left my jacket on.
I figured it'd be cold in
Thank
here.
you.
Steve Adams, Wilsonville. How are you? I'm here now. Good. How you doing? Good. Your presentation.
I know, well, thank you very much.
All right.
What do you got?
We're doing our CIP project update.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, all right.
Sorry about that. I sent an email from a young man who has a dangerous intersection in his neighborhood and would like it fixed, and he doesn't live in the city of Milwaukee.
Oh.
So I handed it off to a person who that intersection.
Well, good evening. Or good afternoon, I guess. And between the two.
Yeah, close enough to evening.
So thank you for inviting us here for this presentation. I think I've met everybody before in at least one meeting. So I'm Steve Adams, the city engineer, and
Jennifer Garbley, Assistant City Engineer.
we're here to tell you what fantastic work we've been doing with spending city money.
For the last year.
Cool.
Okay. So in the last year, we have completed 9 projects, all shown here on the map, between doing a slurry seal, complete street rebuild, sidewalk infill, clay pipe replacement. We've been pretty busy in getting a lot of stuff done and in the ground. All were completed within budget, and 6 of the projects were designed in-house, which saves a lot of money from going into a consultant and having things designed.
So just a little quick about Milwaukee Bay Park. We finished the Kellogg Creek Bridge. We even gotten final payment from FEMA. So we're working on closing that out, and it's looking great. No complaints, and everyone pretty pleased with the work we've done, which is exciting. We have the emergency repair we did for Bridge A. I didn't know if you got an opportunity to actually see a picture of the pipe, but that was our corrugated pipe that was holding up the bridge that was completely melted away. And the new bridge looks great. They did a nice job, and now we do have racks on each end, so no one can actually crawl under and sleep under the bridge at this point.
It's not made of plastic anymore.
It's not made of plastic. It's an actual steel corrugated pipe that goes through there. And maintenance has the ability to open up those racks to clean out on either side of the bridge. And then we have our lovely staircase. I don't know if you've been out there recently. I didn't have a updated photo, but it's starting to fill in, and we're starting to get some actual plants taking over. We'll be doing a check here in the next couple months to see if there's any other repairs that need to happen, and if we've gotten any invasives that we got to pull. So,
If you didn't get over there when the Clarkia was in bloom, it was quite pretty.
oh, nice.
When what?
When the Clarkia was in bloom, Clarkia is a native plant that has these really pretty pink flowers that I can't really describe. But anyway, it was a really nice meadow effect.
Excellent. And then we've got our Selwood and Ardenwall safe projects. I just wanted to highlight, if you don't know, we actually installed 26 new ADA ramps, 17 additional trees, and we saved 9 trees between these two projects, which was definitely a good undertaking. 2,381 linear feet of sidewalk installed and pathway. And so you see a picture in the middle. That's our new pathway that connects by the Ardenwall School, 2 blocks. And then on the left is Ardenwald that's wrapping around the school that you would connect sidewalk. So the entire block now has no gaps. And then you have our Selwood going up 30th, going up towards Selwood, which was quite exciting to see that. Also, 1,473 students now are within a half-mile radius of safe routes to school. So we're going to keep improving that and moving that forward.
And our current projects we have under design right now, under construction. Under construction, 2019 SSMP, that's a total street rebuild of Wake and 39th by Ardenwald and Omark in the industrial area. We're digging them completely down to a new base rock, full asphalt reconstruction of those 3 streets. The Kronberg
Before
Park.
you move on,
Sure.
the Omark, has that always been on the CIP, or was that moved up from somewhere?
No, it's been on the
It's
CIP
always
for a
been on.
while.
Has it? Okay.
Yep.
I didn't remember that one, and I was sort of like, why that one before McBride? Because I knew McBride was the big, yeah.
And McBride is coming. We will talk about it.
Okay.
And with the Kronberg Park walkway, if you've been down there recently, John has a few pictures of it, but that is under construction and due to be completed this fall. The plaza is also under construction, and that's going to be a pretty spectacular design, and Jen has a really wonderful slide on it. The 2019 SSMP included the road, well, I covered that. Wait a minute. Oh, South Downtown improvements. Okay, I skipped that one. So that is, we're back on track. The conflict at 21st and Washington's been resolved. Contractor's going to mow back out on site on Sunday night and work nights next week to extend the storm and water line up to, to the storm up to the railroad tracks, and water line where you have to patch a 15-foot segment or so we had to cut out in order for the work to occur for the franchise utility group. And then well number 2, I'll talk about that in a little bit more on another slide, but that is in progress too.
And I just want to say that, 4 of these projects are going to be completed before the end of the year. So we are moving, they're all on track. And then Will 2 is actually expected to be completed early winter 2020. So all of this done very soon. So this is the latest on our mosaic for what's going to go into the plaza. They sent us just a quick snapshot of what it's going to look like. The exciting part is this is planned to be poured, if everything goes right, October 1st, the first fish to go in. So we'll know next week if anything's getting delayed, but we're on schedule at the moment, and we're planning to do the band first, and then the week after that we'll come in and do the 2 fish, and then you'll see the logs getting placed, and I'm hoping I can get access from Axle Tree to see if I can get a couple pictures from above pointing down as we go through this, and to add them to the website so people can see it. South Downtown, like Steve said, we're now cut and clear with the franchise utility conflict, so we're moving forward. I'm hoping not to hit any other conflicts, but you're going through the intersection, so we'll work them out as we go. And we're anticipated to be cleaned up and out of here before end of October for South Downtown. Plaza to be done beginning of November. So city staff is starting to think about a ribbon cutting event. So we should have a date with that within probably the next 3 weeks to nail that down for November.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, Kronberg. I don't know if you got a chance to see, but we've got steel. Steel has been delivered. The bridge is being put together. They were actually able to put the long bridge together in a week. It went together very smoothly. They were, the contractor was very pleased on how well everything lined up and was able to fit together. When they fabricated this bridge, they actually erected it out in their field completely from end to end. So just to make sure everything fit. And so they deassembled it and then shipped it to the site. So now this is showing the middle picture, the entrance from the north, from the at-grade path that you would actually step onto the path. That's a middle looking back towards your at-grade path. And then this is from the end of the Long Bridge, standing on McLaughlin, looking back the Long Bridge. And towards the center there, you'd be able to, that's your lookout point. Oh, my pointer doesn't work. I'm sorry. I tried. So, and the short bridge was just built this week, so it was installed yesterday. And so now we're start working on the boardwalk section, and then we're prepping to pour this towards the end of the month, early October, the deck. So we are moving. The at-grade path, we're looking at paving middle of October. And after that, then I've been in correspondence with PNCDR and with Parks, and so to do their at-grade path, their soft path. And so I'm hoping by the time we open up this project that we're all done and complete.
So the at-grade path is going to be asphalt instead of concrete?
It's a porous asphalt.
Okay.
We were required from land use to do a porous material. I decided I didn't want, if I had to have it porous, I didn't want it to be concrete. Concrete plugs a lot faster when you have organics, and so you're in a park setting. And so I decided then let's go with an AC porous option for that.
Okay.
And so, you know, we've already had trouble with people using the bridge, even with the fence up. So once this is done, if we're waiting for the soft paths to be done, we're gonna have trouble keeping people from using this. Yeah.
So let me reframe the schedule. I'm still not going to be done until the end of the year because that's not including, just because we have the deck, it has to cure for 28 days. We still need to put railing up. We still need to put lighting. So we're still looking at being done at the end of the year, but I'm not opening the path probably till January.
Okay. I mean, I think you're going to have trouble keeping people off of it.
Oh, well, yeah, there's people walking through the site for sure.
Yeah.
And we're doing the best we can at that point. But yeah, as far as actually physically opening it where we're legally stand is January.
January, okay.
Yep.
And the, I do know NCPRD has been hoping to, I think they've been in contact with Kelly, have a work party to plant trees and stuff, probably like in early December.
We are working very closely together.
Okay.
So yeah, me and Tanya are working that out.
Okay, great.
I just want to make sure that the comment is clear about why Jen's concerned about people being on site. So this is actually a safety hazard. We will not have railings on the side of this. These are substantial drops.
Yeah.
It is not safe. On top of which, if we walk on this before it is cured, you will cause significant damage to the long-term health of this bridge. Please don't until we open the site. We are not sitting on it for fun. I promise the day that we can open this thing, we will open it. But we need to make sure that we don't cause damage to you or to the site.
Would it be possible to get that message out to the NDA leadership?
Yes.
And also, I mean, I think, people tend to, in terms of like on-site signage, people sort of take their own safety into their own hands, and they kind of recognize that risk. I think that if the message is also, the damage to the bridge, you might actually have more success.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to make sure it was clear that this isn't simply just, you could fall, and it would be a problem without having the.
That's a serious problem, but also so is if
ruining the bridge.
ruining the bridge.
Right.
And
So
having to repour portions.
And I just, well, not this past Sunday when it was pouring, but the 2 Sundays before that, I saw people walking in the bike lane of McLaughlin to go to the farmer's market. One woman pulling her grandkids in a wagon. I was just like, really? You can't cross McLaughlin and go down the trolley trail? But no. So, I mean, we need this for sure.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know how this will work or what we'll do, but we're going to need a tiny little connection from the end of the parking lot in the apartment complex up to the sidewalk, because there is right now it's the driveway into the apartment complex, and there's no place to walk.
Property?
It is, and we do not
Well,
currently have it budgeted,
it's
so it
actually-
is a separate project.
Right, it's actually ODOT.
Oh,
Part where we need-
ODOT's property? I don't think it's.
It's ODOT property predominantly. I mean, there might be like 4 feet of private property
Right.
and then
Yeah.
ODOT property.
Chuck also had expressed some concerns about the easement transfer when he was here. That was part of why he didn't go down this path. I totally hear the mayor, and I'm open to having the discussion, but it is currently unbudgeted, and we do not currently own the property in order to provide the service. If you want us to add that to a future discussion for a CIP dialogue, we can do that. We're going to be before you as the Budget Committee in February with that update, and I can ask the staff just to think about this.
I would think there's also an ADA issue with that. That's a pretty steep grade there.
It's not,
'Cause I've walked down the driveway to the apartments,
So-
which is not,
when you get on
horrible,
the parking lot that's closest to the city, it might be an 8-foot grade change, 10-foot,
is that all?
something like that at the end of the parking lot. It's not super big between there
Okay.
and at least that road. So there's that dirt road that sort of parallels McLaughlin. I guess it was a driveway or something at some point. Anyway, just saying, I've gotten a number of phone calls about that.
So has anybody talked to the owner of the apartment complex? It seems like that's a starting point.
And they immediately go, it's not ours, it's the city's.
But when it's explained to them that it isn't, it's private property and ODOT property,
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like the best avenue to pursue.
It's obviously got to be a conversation with ODOT is going to be the hard part, but yeah.
So, I love this bridge. It looks awesome. It does occur to me that we are now creating another place that we're going to have people camping underneath. And so are we planning to do anything that we can do to deter that?
Yeah, we definitely have a potential to have some people camping under here. It is in the parks, though, so I would say that'll be patrolled by parks. Is that correct, Ann?
It is, and we have, the NCPRD team has a process by which they notice that any camping that happens on site. They work with individuals at the site. I believe it's a 5-day notice requirement, and then they work with the individuals to relocate. But they have a process, and we usually just call Kevin and ask him to start his process as we receive complaints.
I was just thinking, could we, plant, under the light rail, they put, cobbles, but could we plant, but I guess nothing under there is going to get water either, so it's not like we could plant Oregon grape and prickly things, and they wouldn't get water, so that wouldn't work. Yeah.
Well, let's keep up our efforts to house the houseless.
That would be the first
And then
choice.
we wouldn't have to worry about the others then. Yep.
Yep.
Any other questions about Kronberg?
No, it's awesome. Looks amazing. Can't wait.
Okay. With the 2019 SSMP, I think I have talked about this before in Budget Committee, but for the current work on Wake 39th and Omark, it's 95,000 square feet of complete street reconstruction. The contract is just under $1 million, but we have some extra money in there in case some extra costs come up. For the slurry seal, we did $222,000 for almost 1 million square feet of street. About 6.1 miles of streets were slurry sealed. That was all done by through the Public Works Department. So kudos to Peter and his staff on that. Well number 2, this again is Peter's project, and the well shaft is drilled. It's completed, $614,000 on phase 1, which is the well. They're doing some pump test of it right now. Peter tells me the tests look promising and the water yields out of the well should be pretty good. And he expects to go next month to bid for the well house, and that is budgeted at $500,000, and that's due to be completed in winter. But the well will be, it's operational pretty much once they get the testing done, and then well house will be completed by winter. So good progress on that project.
And that well house is that's on the 40th and Harvey property?
I'm correct, yes?
The well house is on the 40th and Harvey property.
And like how big is a well house?
It's not huge. It's going to be in front of the existing fire station. It's on the corner. If you're looking at the old fire station, you see the tanks off to your right. It's just to the left of the tanks.
Okay.
So it sort of is sitting right in that area. But if you've seen I think it's about the size of the well house at Burtman House. So if you have seen that space. But it's our property, and we kind of use it for storage. Otherwise, right now, the staff use it to do facility storage. We have the books there right now, and we will be having...
You mean the fire station?
The fire station and on that site, but there's really no other, they actually store doors that we need for future installation or old shelving, or Damien has done an excellent job of cleaning it out. But for the most part, this isn't a site, we need the site for water, so it's the appropriate place to put the pump house.
All right, so upcoming projects. We got 11 projects that we are already in the books and are in the planning process. 6 of them are safe projects, so quite exciting. 5 of them are Linwood, 43rd, River and 22nd, 42nd, and Edison. We're all planning to go out to bid next spring or next summer. So that's quite exciting. We have 42nd Edison, our in-house design, so that's staff here.
So I don't know where Edison is. Is that connecting to the...
Edison is that smaller section by that green.
Yeah. So is that near the Selwood Street one?
It is near actually 224.
Oh, okay.
224, 37th right there, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, 37th and
There's,
224.
it's the south side of the 37th intersection on 224.
Okay, okay.
Monroe, we're planning at this time to start going out for an RFP this fall and to promote funding that we want to try to get in this next grant opportunities with ODOT. We can talk about that a little more if you like. A bit. McBride right now is at 90% design, and we're moving along. We want to go out to bid actually this January. It's incorporating not only pavement, but new sidewalks on one side, stormwater upgrades, and water upgrades. And then some correspondence with the railroad, which also is great, but also can make things take a little bit longer sometimes. We got signals, so mostly an in-house design because we're working with county. County is our traffic engineer, kind of extension of our staff, and so we're looking at all 10 signals to get upgraded as far as what do you call it?
The current cabinet's called a 170. It dates to the 1970s. we're going to upgrade to ITS, which is Intelligent Traffic System, which is what the county just switched to in the last year or two for their cabinets. And these are pretty neat in that you set them for a certain time, and then there's a little computer in the cabinet, and it reads when no traffic is coming. And if you have a 30-second slot dedicated for this leg of the intersection, and traffic clears out in 20, 25 seconds, it reallocates the time to the major way going through. So as traffic increases or decreases during the day, it's kind of self-adjusts, and so basically makes a more efficient transportation system throughout the city.
And are those signals all tied to the fiber that we were just hearing about?
We're going to try to get a lot of them upgraded to the fiber. That's another conversation, but yes, the goal is to get them hooked to the fiber. Absolutely. Another thing, our current signals, because they're so outdated, if they have one laptop that basically they can work with our signals, if that goes, we're like out of luck. So we felt this was pretty important to start getting our signals upgraded.
Are our new signals even the old type?
It's not as old. The one right here at Adams and Washington and 21st.
There's that one, and then there's the one in front of the Waverly.
Yeah,
There's
two that are upgraded to what they call the 2070 cabinets, which was the state of the art just a few years ago. So yes, those are two will not be upgraded. We're staying with the 2070s at those two.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was actually hopeful that we'd end up with the smart lights at the sort of Washington 21st Adams thing, because people will sit there.
Yes,
We do have a repair going to happen. We're looking into that as well. We're bringing a consultant on, and Steve, I think you have a little more information.
Yeah, I've tasked Dalton with that project. The gentleman who did the original phasing of that work, we're going to subcontract with, and to update the phasing. The problem is it's a 6-phase system. Every time a train comes through, it resets to the first phase. It doesn't pick up with where it left off. So we're working with the company in reprogramming it to pick up where it left off so that it completes. You don't sit at Adams as part of the phase 6. So you don't sit there for 10 minutes waiting for your green light to come on, because every time a train comes, it resets to phase 1. So we are working on that right now. Clackamas County has to do some test control of it to make sure it works before it goes in, but that's currently in the works.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got some 2020 SSMP that's going to be designed in-house. And then Waverly Heights, we're looking at going out for RFP for design. And then we've got some MEEC updates.
So is that the sewer at Waverly Heights, or is that road?
Sewer.
Sewer.
It's a sewer project.
That will be fascinating.
Yeah.
Doesn't a lot of that go through people's yards?
Backyards.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I just remember.
Clay pipe, backyards. It's the last of our clay pipe now that we've finished our clay pipe last year, so within the city.
Have you saved a piece of that clay pipe to donate to the Milwaukee Museum?
We couldn't save the last one because we burst it, so it's still in
All
ground.
here are excuses.
Well, years
Is that how you're going to do this, is to burst all this?
Oh, we don't know yet.
I was going to say, years ago when I had a tour with the water team and went to the well at 40th and Harvey, the one I guess we're replacing, they had a bunch of old pipe in there. They had, in those shelves in that 40th and Harvey building, they had kind of like a little history lesson of, what pipe's been used over the years. And yeah. So
It's
hopefully
like our
they
version
still
of
have
pot
that.
shirts, we just need an archaeologist to come along and comb through the refuse.
Yeah.
And they'll go, what was this? They did what?
So are you going to go one by one through all those, or are you just giving us a...
Not one by one, but if you have more questions when we're done, we're more than welcome to. There's a couple we want to talk about in addition. But yeah, so you've got about 5 up there that are in design, that are in-house design, and then a few that will be out. But that's a lot, especially because we want to get those also all built next year, except for the Waverly Heights and the Monroe. would not be constructed next year.
So the one on
Hold on, I
Linwood,
gotta add one thing to that. So Linwood won't be done next summer. So, I mean, there's a couple of those that are in design, but the construction won't be complete until 2021, right?
Not completed, but we may start and go out to bid next year. So that's what I'm proposing, is going out to bid. They won't be finished.
right.
And in Monroe, I know we're still trying to get all the money together for it, but didn't we get money for the 224 intersection? And would we not go ahead and do that ahead of the rest of Monroe?
I can do this one too. Wait, Scott, is this making you uncomfortable? Okay. So because I don't have my name tag.
Checking, though, that was really good.
Here we go.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to take Justin. So I'm going to pass you out a little fact sheet that I was going to give you at some point anyway. It's very draft. But yes, Councilor Beatty, so what that is talking about, that RFP is specifically for design. So we're going to have to work through the details of what all segments would be designed. But yes, there's a lot of funding pots which are actually more certain than others. I've listed kind of the table of different funding sources on that document you just looked at. The signal work at 224, and then also the safety leverage as a part of the ODOT STIP. I would put on the looking pretty good side of the line because they are included in the draft STIP. The one that we're pursuing, and the reason why this fact sheet has been created right now is because we have a pending grant application with Metro for $3 million to hopefully finish rounding out the budget. But what I was chatting with Jen and Steve about is we've been holding on the design portion until we had a pretty good sense of our funding. The time is right now to just go ahead and get going on design. We have a lot of different intersections with this project, either whether it be with Pinnick Developments or the Home Avenue Safe Project or the Linwood Diverter. It's a pretty long corridor. So getting into design, getting that contract moving, getting some of our stakeholders engaged in that process, I think would be helpful. And then we'll have to just scale that work and that design so that we can construct whatever total funding amount we have between that 2021 and 2024 time period. But some of it is largely secured, some of it is less secured. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess my question was also, so we just want to wait and do it all at once. We wouldn't do like the 224 intersection first.
Oh, no,
while we're still working on it.
absolutely not. This is a highly scalable project.
No.
And I think the only reason I'm being cagey with you is in terms of we have not scoped out the design contract yet. So I'm going to have to work closely with Steve and Stephen and others just to make sure that we can get the designs we need on the timeline we need them so that we can build as we go in a way that makes sense and has it function for people. But absolutely not. I mean, as you're seeing with the Linwood project, if we have an opportunity to construct a safety improvement, we do it, right? If we're building Home Avenue Safe Project and there's an intersection that we need to improve, we want to be able to do that with that project. Certainly the 224 project, I'm hoping ODOT designs and delivers that project. And so we want to make sure that that design is informed by the way we want it to look, and so that we have that piece done. So I do believe, and you're seeing it be delivered in a phased way, just based on the nature of the improvements. We also needed to match up with the county. They have a tentative timeline of when they want to do it that hopefully matches, but we'll see.
Thank you.
Small detail, but it still looks like the Monroe Greenway ends at 21st Street. And, from there down to McLaughlin is fine. There's really nothing that needs doing, but the crossing of McLaughlin needs a touch. It's not an ideal crossing on a bike.
Right, and that's with the ODOT project, right?
No, that's 224.
Oh, 224. I'm sorry.
So right now what we have is, it's basically a dead-end street.
Yeah.
Dead end, it's a T intersection or whatever.
Right into.
So a bicyclist has to cut over into the pedestrian and go between two very tight spaces. It's not good. I mean, it's doable for somebody who's rides a lot, but.
Is it possible that 99 funding that we've been discussing for the Metro bond would address that?
The T2020 project?
Right.
I haven't So the main thing that I was talking about for T2020 was, I did say generically kind of crossings, 99 crossings, but it was mainly targeting it more towards the undercrossing, or potential undercrossing if you take the dam out. I think the feedback that the local investment teams are giving is that crossings are still important. However, the priority areas are places where signals are far apart, and that is not us. So I think it would be steep. But in terms of your point, how we reflect the entirety of the greenway is something that we can do. And this is just the draft words. I have a draft map that we're creating that shows the greenway more specifically, and I can, see how we can reflect that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the 2020 SSMP, what are we working on right now? Or Lake Road, between 21st to Guilford. And this is going to be a complete reconstruction. When this project got started, in concept, it was going to be just a 2-inch grind and overlay. The street is in very, very bad shape, and it's not going to be worth a grind and overlay. We need to go down and rebuild the entire street. So that increased the cost of the project quite a bit, and working with Kelly, we've identified several other projects that I think we're going to cobble money from, bring them over to this project so we can build this next summer. This includes the intersection at Oatfield 2. We're going to go through that, so it's going to be
Awesome.
the whole length is going to be rebuilt. We're also looking into if we can afford to widen the street to put bike lanes in along this stretch. We're in the early phases yet. I don't know how much money that's going to add to it, and if we can find the money to pay for the bike lanes, but we are going to at least investigate how much extra that would cost. And of course, with the complete street rebuild comes the stormwater requirements that is from our DEQ permit. So we will be identifying and locating and putting in the stormwater quality swales along this section of Lake Road.
Both sides?
Yes, we have to treat water, the whole, yeah. So somehow we get to figure out where to find land, where to place these, and do the stormwater treatments, yes. And then with Wood Avenue, we, again, we're looking to rebuild that street. And with that, we're looking for, we don't have quite enough money identified for this complete street rebuild. And again, with the complete street rebuild, it may trigger some requirements for adding a sidewalk based on the U.S. Access Board requirements for providing pedestrian connectivity when you do add a street or do a street rebuild. So if we have to add a sidewalk to that, we have to go out, identify, and find money to put that sidewalk in. But again, that's in a very early stage. And right now, we don't have enough money, and we'll have to identify funds for it.
Also, Wood Avenue is not identified as a SAFE project at the moment, so we can't just take SAFE money to build with it. So it's finding additional funds elsewhere. So as far as for the program goes, for the 9 years that we have slated. So
It was a safe project further out? No,
No,
it
we
wasn't
have-
at all.
It's
Okay.
not at all at the moment. I mean, the idea, I think, of the SAFE program is eventually after we finish the 9 years, then what are we going to be doing next, right? So it'd be kind of after that at this point. But we're
Have we, I know, part of the conversation around SAFE would be that it would actually extend the life and improve the ability to do more SSMP. Do we have sort of an idea about, this sounds like a real downer, but I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that actually we sort of we're able to get a little bit more out of our dollars from SSMP because we added the additional resource of SAFE. And so, I think that some of these projects were sort of like fast-tracked a little bit maybe, and so maybe we're just sort of now seeing that there's, maybe that was a little ambitious, thinking that we'd be able to extend it so much more because, because we freed the SSMP of the responsibility for building ramps, for example.
I can jump in just quickly because it's not fair probably to make Steve or Jen do this one. I would say don't be a downer. Everything's great. And so we are getting a lot done. Being able to leverage multiple pots is a good thing. SSMP, though, is quite challenging for us. A lot of the assumptions that got baked into our estimates were overlays, not full rebuilds, and our system is in pretty bad shape. So what you're seeing with Wood is we have we're getting a lot of community feedback about the need. and the pavement condition is quite bad. We know it's not a safe priority though, and so how can we meet the pavement need there without taking kind of those key resources away from the sidewalks? In cases where it matches up, it's great, but even in those places, sometimes we're finding that we're a little short on pavement just because of the depth of the work that needs to be done there.
And that's then, so it's triggering project, it sounds like it's triggering infrastructure that we definitely weren't expecting to build.
I think
Even if we didn't have safe.
yeah, I think it's probably
Stormwater
both.
wasn't something that would have been required with an overlay.
That one I'll let Steve try to answer if he wants to, but I think the stormwater, yes, we have, it's also just taking a more kind of aggressive approach towards stormwater as well and seeing how you can accommodate some of that on site with your projects. And so we have, it's a little bit of, it's many different factors. In some cases, we didn't assume enough and we should have been a little more conservative on our needs for both SSMP and storm. So that factored. You also have new expertise that's come to the table that's looking at it and saying, actually, you are triggering stormwater here.
Okay.
So you need to, so where that hadn't been assumed, you need to assume it now. And then there's just, yeah, it's just also learning as we go. But on the places where we have both SAFE and SSMP funds, it is really helpful. It's really great to be able, I think you're seeing it here because I don't have the matching SAFE. So this is actually a good example of your point, which is when you don't have both pots, then you have a challenge. When you can put both pots together, it is really helpful.
But your comment about the 2-inch overlay, you're correct in that the 2-inch overlay does not trigger stormwater requirements. A full rebuild does require stormwater requirements.
Okay.
But we're finding that many of our streets need more than an overlay. And so, that's where we are starting to trigger those items. And we'll have an updated, as we get through the plan for the next CIP, what needs to happen for SSMP and Storm to help rebuild those streets properly.
One of the priorities that we identified in mitigation in the climate action plan was addressing the need to be more proactive about our stormwater. So I know this is an expense we hadn't accounted for in terms of SSMP, and we hadn't gotten to the point of budgeting in terms of thinking about it for the climate action plan. But this is within the scope of work that we had anticipated on a sort of visionary level, at least. So it's just coming to us in a different way.
When do we start getting the 2017 money fully from the state? That should...
The gas tax increases? I believe some of that's assumed in the budget that we have right now.
Is it?
And then it would be going, I don't know when the next bump up happens. I'd have to check with Bonnie, but it's kind of in the pipeline of what we're spending now. And then I think there's a gradual increase.
And then there's also the counties.
Then there's the VRF, and I believe that,
Bridge fee?
yeah, that doesn't start collecting
Till 21
till 2021?
January 2020, I'm told, is
January.
is when it
first
starts.
disbursement. Yeah.
Okay.
We did calculate in, we also have been having conversations with Public Works because a portion of the gas tax money will also be going towards the increased maintenance requirements. So I think we cut a third of our income from projects to maintenance, to operations, just as a reminder.
Which is important, because we're building more facilities and we got to maintain them then. And so needing that support on Public Works is really critical.
Especially
Make them
around our
function.
water swales, the swales that we're building, we haven't in the past had the staff.
Yeah.
We haven't needed them.
We're getting a little bit of pushback from the community, like, why are you building these, but you're not maintaining them? And so we're checking in and seeing what else we can do.
Okay.
All right, now we have Meek. So where we're at with Meek is phase 1. We're still trying to get approval from the railroad for the easements and the property acquisition. At this point, I'm starting to look at some other possible alternative options. I'm not here to talk to you about those options right yet, but I think it's going to be in the near future. We have a couple opportunities that may make a little more sense for the city. However, for phase 2, we do want to proceed. So we are working on purchasing the property at Oak and Railroad. It's a small parcel that we want to put one of the storm detention ponds at. It's also benefit because the development next door, which is the McFarland site, Monroe Apartments is the actual developer name, right? We're probably looking at a traffic circle or roundabout in that area to help with traffic flow through there. So purchasing this property also aids to that ability to do that.
And who owns, is that railroad property?
It's railroad property. They've already told us we can purchase that one.
Okay.
They're willing to give that one up. So I'm moving that forward as quickly as possible to purchase that piece of property.
Also the 29th Avenue Greenway, or whatever we're going to call it, as it's coming through that area, right? We have the Greenway that go from Springwater Corridor up 29th, crossing through that part somehow, and then connecting to Monroe.
Correct.
So it'd be good to have that piece of property for that as well.
Absolutely. So our goal is to go out to construction for that phase 2 piece of the pipeline, build that water quality facility there at Oak and Railroad. This would allow that Monroe Street apartments to connect to this facility so they can build. Otherwise, they don't really have a place to discharge their stormwater to. And so we've been talking with them to try to meet an October 2020 deadline, and we're still on track to be able to make that deadline at this time.
And where will the water quality, is it east or, well, I'm always turned around about what's north and south or east and west around 224, but is it on the same side of Oak as the apartments, or is it on
Yes.
the other side of Oak?
No, it's still on the same side
as the apartments. Okay.
as the apartments.
Okay.
Our pond or their pond?
It's west of the apartments. The facility is west of the apartments, but you're not on the other side of the railroad.
Not under Oak Street. Not
No.
over there where it's kind of like a little boulevarded thing with the railroad and the Oak Street.
We don't go underneath the rail.
Okay.
We go parallel to the rail.
And you don't go underneath Oak Street either.
The
Yeah,
Monroe
you'd go under
Apartments.
Oak Street to connect to it. There'll be a pipeline from the apartment to the facility.
Right, the facility is on the other side of Oak.
Okay.
We're all
Well, that's
getting
what I was asking.
Sorry.
Yeah. The apartments facility is at the very west end of their development site. So it borders Oak Street and 100 feet of Monroe. That's their facility. Then they have to tie into our storm line, the Meek Street storm line. So they'll come underneath
Oak Street.
Oak Street to tie into our storm system.
Okay.
And then we have another pipeline that'll be coming from 37th down in front of the apartment complex to tie into that facility as well. So there'll be 2 inlets into there.
Okay. This makes more sense if you're looking at the map right as we're having the conversation.
Did we get a map?
I just pulled it up on Google Maps.
Google Maps.
Okay. Oh,
That's the facility there.
okay.
There you go. So for staff updates, some new staff, we have Steve Adams that started in May, our new city engineer, and then we have Emily Swagger, our new engineering tech 2, who started in June. She's been helping out with a lot of CIP inspections. So it's been great.
And then this month, we just promoted 2 of our staff members. Stephen McWilliams passed his PE test he took it last October, I believe, so he's notified passing it in January. And we promoted him to civil engineer, and he'll start taking over more project management, more design, and everything. So he was very happy to be promoted into civil engineer. And then Jennifer Backhouse, who's been here for 3 years, has been engineering tech 1. And my goal for the engineering techs is to be able to do everybody else's job, so no one's stuck in one single role, so we can have a little more just coverage for all the needs that we have. And so with that, and with her longevity here, and she's got a great personality and attitude, promoted her to engineering technician 2.
Great.
Cool.
That's it. What other questions you got?
Well, I have questions and comments on the River and 22nd design, but we probably don't have time to go into those tonight. So,
I think we have a couple minutes. I don't know how much time do we have. We're at 5:45. We got time. Oh, never mind. We don't have time. But we can certainly, why don't you go ahead? Do you mind if you go ahead and get them out there, at least on the record?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. The designs were at the neighborhood picnic, and I guess two things I want to make. One thing I didn't look at well, neither of these did I look at closely enough because I wasn't at the neighborhood picnic for all that long. But one thing is, one concern is just to make sure that however the sidewalks that are going up 22nd, that we're doing something to slow traffic turning from 22nd onto Sparrow.
Yes, there is a pork chop in the 30%
There is a pork
design.
chop? Okay, good. Then my other issue is that I think we need sidewalks on the cross streets, which are Bluebird and Wren. And Bluebird in particular. And I think Bluebird will be a challenge because it's already a parking problem with the little play cafe. But people walk there's an apartment complex there. There's there's all those funky short segments of the trolley trail between the signals. People walk every which way. And I know someone who's got who's very strapping young 30-something-year-old who won't stand at the lights on the trolley trail after the accident where the woman lost her legs. He feels like that is way too vulnerable to be out there, especially when he's with his kids. And so people try to walk the Bluebird or bike the Bluebird or whatever, and not necessarily the trolley trail unless they've already been on the trolley trail. Then they're probably following through. So anyway, I really feel like we need a sidewalk on what I guess would be the side of Bluebird furthest away from McLaughlin, whatever direction that is, to connect from 22nd to River and to connect those sidewalks.
You want to go in between 22nd and River?
And then out to the trolley trail, is that what you're talking about?
Pardon?
I think what you are,
Okay, what you're...
sorry, I'm trying to get to it on the map.
South side of the street, the side of the street opposite of the daycare?
Yeah, south side of the street, south side of Bluebird.
Yeah.
So the side where the apartment complex is.
Yeah, the side where the apartment complex is. Because, I just think there's a lot of unsafe interaction in there, and we're creating these sidewalks, and there's also school kids getting on and off of buses too, and moving back and forth. 22nd is where the school buses typically drop and pick people up. So I think both connecting. It would be ideal to have both connecting streets have sidewalks.
That's Bluebird and...
I believe it's Wren, right?
Yeah, Wren's in the
Between-
south.
Wren is where those two new houses are being built, so hopefully they're building sidewalks, and we can just connect on.
I believe that
So the next one to the south.
We can certainly take that back to Tessie. So as you know, like right now, being at 30%, it's all inputs welcome. The only bit of caution I'll say is adding new streets of sidewalk could pretty rapidly blow the budget that's assigned to it right now. So I don't know yet until we take it back and look at kind of what specific area you're talking about. But that may be challenging, but we want to know. So it's good to tell us now, and we can kind of see how that does or doesn't fit within kind of what we scoped out at this stage, but it's good input. So
Well, and I also hear in there building a sidewalk on Bluebird because people feel unsafe on the trolley trail is the city taking responsibility for a problem that is really created by ODOT. So is that the place we should push?
Going to ask, have you ever seen, has anybody ever scratched out even a 5% design of that mess? I know ODOT considers it a mess and would like to fix it, but
Yes, there was, and yes, my understanding is that that was really all about when the light rail was coming through, and so I have no idea if any amount of that design would even still be applicable. I thought it was prior to light rail construction, not post-light rail construction rehab. So yes, I believe there are sketched out levels of design, and there was interest from ODOT in trying to do some realignment, but that was as a part of PMLR. I don't think anyone's looked at it since, but I'm also not there, so.
Yeah, we did that one little fix right there at
Yeah.
where River Road, or
22nd.
And I also believe a lot of the design impacted property that the community wasn't terribly interested in impacting, if I recall. So, but anyway, I was only tangentially, close to it. I know you guys want to eat, and I don't want to keep you from that. I have one small other thing that I should tell you. So we were talking about Lake, and Steve alluded to the fact that we need to move money to that project to move it from what it was assumed to what it actually really needs to be. One of the likely candidates for that at this point is actually King. So if you remember, King is a phase 1 SAFE project. It had SSMP, transportation, and SAFE money on it. It has been on hold, mostly at my direction, because when we went in and looked at what we would build, it wasn't making a lot of sense to me. It kind of looked like we were replacing not great sidewalk with a little bit less bad sidewalk, and we didn't have really great designs or connections for like where Stanley crosses at the Greenway. I had some concerns about maybe we were stretching too far and not really designing and delivering something that the community would see as a benefit. So it's been kind of on my hold list until we can circle back and sort out what would be a really helpful project. Since it's been on the hold list, it's a good candidate. The SAFE money stays right where it is, but some of the SSMP and transportation dollars could move over to help round out Lake, which we increasingly hear is a real concern for folks. So I'll formalize that more as we move along, but I just wanted to kind of test that with you, because if the reaction I got back was, what are you talking about? Like, why didn't that move yesterday? I would kind of want to know that. So
I think that's a good idea.
Makes good sense to me.
And when you say it goes to Guilford, is Guilford where the new,
It's where
the construction ended?
Yep.
The widening and okay, perfect.
So, yeah.
Perfect,
exactly.
awesome.
Before we were going to stop before the intersection.
Stop before the intersection, I know, that was like,
The intersection was the worst part.
right. Right.
Cool. That's
No,
super
it's-
exciting.
Yeah.
Go forth.
Right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. With that, we are concluded on our work session, and we will be back here in 20 minutes for the regular session.